life in 3 dimensions got me bent and got me twisted. I know I done said a lot, but I should probably stop pretending. I don't really hold the key and I can't really push a button. I just step up to the mic and try my very best to bust it, but I ran out of breath. It's tight in my chest, my feet just might fail. I can't stand the pressure.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Racially Speaking. I'm your host, David Phipps. And before we get into it, I'm trying to do better with this, but please like, share, subscribe, rate, review, all that kind of good stuff to us on YouTube, as well as Apple, Spotify, Google. I think that's really where everybody listens, but I think there's other places too, I'm told. So please just like and subscribe. I know it might not seem like it does anything, but I'm told it does. And yeah, we'd really appreciate it if you guys would do that. Also, if you ever want to take it a step further, please consider visiting our Patreon and being part of that community for as little as $1 a month. You can get bonus content from us and feel good about yourself by being part of some of our charity and philanthropic endeavors we routinely give money to. So please check that out. It's at patreon.com/racially speaking to be a part of that. We appreciate you guys that have already done any of these things. So thank you guys. Thank you for continuing to listen. On that note, speaking of YouTube, yes, you can see most full episodes on YouTube now. With that said, sad face, no video for this episode, which is a big shame because I am joined. You would be able to see if we're on YouTube, but I'm joined today. No John Mark today, but I'm joined by my beautiful all-time favorite guest. It's been a while, but my amazing wife right here in our living room. So, baby, thank you for coming on here.
You're welcome.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It's weird to hear you talk on the podcast because normally I hear that in my car.
Yeah. It took some convincing, but here we are.
I do, just to be clear, I do hear you talk outside of the podcast. But
I think it's clear.
Normally, okay, great.
Yeah, hopefully. We're in a very authentic setting, a living room, and you're killing it. You're folding laundry.
Yes.
Would you be willing to tell the listeners that I'm not forcing you to fold laundry?
No, we've got a good deal going.
Yeah.
You wash all of the laundry and carry it up and down the stairs.
To our basement.
And I fold all of the laundry.
Our scary basement, full of earwigs.
Well, to be clear, the whole house is full of earwigs.
This is true.
Not just the basement.
This is true.
But the basement is the worst offender.
Mm-hmm. A bug just crawled out of my sweatshirt, right?
Yes.
Scary stuff. We've had a lot of scares today. We had a snake scare earlier.
Oh no.
Garter snake in the yard. Any snake fans? All right, let's get derailed quickly, and it's entirely my fault. Kaitlyn, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming back. Well, look, you are my favorite person to talk to in general. That's one. Two, we are in one of our many, I guess we just came out of it, but one of our many endless celebratory seasons. So,
yes.
For those of you who don't know, you guys know most of this part, but we just went through Mother's Day, Father's Day. We're recording this on Juneteenth. We just, passing sounds like death, but Loving Day just passed. That's how I should say it.
Yep.
My birthday's somewhere in there, but that's the least of, racially speaking, the least important one, as we're going to talk about. And our anniversary. Goodness, almost forgot that. I'm sorry.
A lot of things.
And on that note, all those reasons, I wanted to have you on to have a check-in. Not that we don't regularly check in, but have a check-in here on the podcast and kind of flesh out some of these topics, anniversaries, celebrations, and all the things that are kind of intertwined into things that we regularly bring up on this podcast with, whether it's me and John Mark, myself alone, or with our guests. And so I've just been thinking about this stuff as we've celebrated these different things. And I was also thinking, as I've shared with you, that I reference you and our family every episode. And so I thought the listeners might appreciate a little combo from our living room about what goes on in our household and how we discuss some of these things as a unit, as a couple, as a family of 5, and how we kind of navigate some things.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
Sounds good. Family of 5, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. Well, let's start there. Family 5, that's a lot. This might sound like a weird question to start off with, but I just want to dive in. How often do you, Kaitlyn, think about our kids being biracial?
All the time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you care to elaborate?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to elaborate. Yeah, all the time. I think I am really protective of our kids. So that's one of the reasons I think about it all the time. I don't want them to experience any of the like negative consequences of the brokenness in the world, especially around, race and justice stuff. And like they're just in vulnerable places. They're in schools. It's a very vulnerable place to be.
Yeah.
With young kids who, everyone just says what they're thinking all the time when they're kids, and something that someone may say offhandedly or because they heard it from a parent or out of curiosity might be like hurtful. So I think about it a lot, and then I think about it with the type of activities that we have them in, the church that we're in, sports. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. If I'm honest, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, maybe I would have said I thought about it all the time, but probably more out of a fearful disposition. And I wouldn't say that was a good thing. Not fear in the sense of, oh my gosh, my mixed race kids are going to experience racism their whole lives, so let's live in fear all the time and paranoia. But I do think it was also more rooted in that than it is now. And I'm thankful, not necessarily because a whole bunch has changed, not saying nothing has changed, but I think now I'm thankful to be able to say that I think about it a lot because I see a lot of the beauty and goodness of them being mixed race kids. And there's a lot that goes into that, and I think it's powerful to be able to just from as early as we have been able to, for them to understand any of it. It's been a beautiful thing about our family to be able to talk to them about their identity, their race, the ethnicity, and then also teaching them about who they are. And I think it's helped them love other people. Like you said, they're in schools and church and neighbors, all that kind of stuff.
No, I think so too. I think that's like something, I don't know if we would have said it when we got married, but something that once we did have kids, has been a high value of we want our kids to know how to love all types of different people. And it helps that they are different in that way too. Like it helps that they're mixed and they have a uniqueness about them, and that's just a part of like household conversation. I'm glad it's a high value.
I should just say how do we, but I'm as I wrote these down so I didn't forget them, I say how do you, but I'll try and answer them too. So how do you thread the needle on this topic with it being a big deal yet also shouldn't be such a big deal to talk about race?
With kids specifically?
Yeah.
I feel like
we could go either direction, but
I don't know if I want to tackle with adults, but with kids, it feels like, I don't know, kids are just really honest. So there's not like a lot of, kids don't know political correctness. They don't know, they don't know like, oh, this would be rude if I said it, or, they just ask questions. And I think because we have certainly misstepped. There's not there's not any idea of thinking that we have done things like perfectly in any way. But I look back and I am proud that we have had a lot of conversations about people being different than us, and that's okay, or that we are different from other people and that's okay. And so because of that, I think it actually makes our kids ask more questions. And some of those questions, when they come out, sound not great or not something that if an adult would say, you'd be like, what's wrong with you? Why are you saying that? But I do feel really good that they feel safe to like ask, like a common thing that both of them, but especially one of them will say right now is, those people look different than us. Mm-hmm. Which, if you hear that from an adult, you're like, why are you saying that? But like from a kid, it's just truly an observation. Those people look different than us. So we've been trying to figure out like, okay, how do we explain like, yes, they do. That's really beautiful. Isn't that cool that God made everyone differently? And then also like, they are different than us. You shouldn't point. Mm-hmm. And maybe don't say it so loud because some people might feel like that is hurtful to be pointed out, that things are different, or that there is some type of like separation because of difference, or
right.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm phrasing that well, but I think I am glad, as funny as the questions can be, or as not well worded the questions can be from our kids. I'm really glad that they know that it's always something that they can ask about, instead of just internalizing all of that and making assumptions.
And I think it's great that you even fumbled through it a little bit, because that's real. That's exactly how we have dealt with it. There's some things that we talk about ahead of time, sure.
Yeah.
But you can only prepare so much, and you certainly can't prepare for a 4-year-old out in public, bluntly, audibly, loudly saying something insensitive.
Yes.
You can't really brace for that. Of course, if you're listening to this, now you can, because that's going to happen, guys. But so would you say, like, I think that really was valuable. Would you say how you even just articulated that's kind of what we have done? Like when one of our kids says, hey, they're different than us, that's kind of the language we use.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. I think so. I mean, I think about even like one of our kids has when they have heard, for a while they were really fascinated with other people speaking other languages than us, and we've certainly tried a lot to be like, most people who don't speak English actually also speak English and also speak another language, because there's a high value on that in other places. And isn't that amazing? Even though we are just over here speaking English. So they used to be super fascinated, and now they've kind of expressed that they feel a little nervous when they hear somebody speaking in a different language, which, is easy to hear and be like, what did we do to make them afraid of another language? But really, it's just them being honest about like a fear that is coming up. And I don't know, it has made me think a lot about how there is part of the brokenness that is in us as people, is that we are afraid when things are different than us, or when people are different than us. So to get our kids to actually articulate that instead of just like feeling it heavily, I think is really good, because then we can actually correct it and bring truth to it, instead of just having it be then a bias that they have.
Yeah. And I don't think you mentioned whether we're just going to focus with kids or adults, but I think that character trait is not even just for kids. Like, I think we all innately have a level of fear of change or something that's different than us, or the unknown. So, I mean, hearing a foreign language is relatively all those things, like, or not dangerous, but unknown, a change from the norm. And
From your own norm.
Right. Yeah, great. Your own norm. And so I do think I have literally seen value in how we've navigated that specific issue is not the right word, but dynamic. Because I remember, and I don't remember where or why or how, but I remember growing up and whenever I would hear another language, whether it was Spanish, I don't know, French or whatnot, I would, it's easy to hear another language that you don't know, and it sounds, funny. I don't know if I was ever, scared or fearful, but I would equate it with, that sounds funny. They sound like they're speaking really fast. And I think it's made all the difference that and I'm not just trying to pass on the back, but I'm comparing it to my own upbringing, but I think it's made all the difference when we've stopped and said, it's just different to our kids. And because we don't know.
It's not funny. It's just different.
Yeah, we don't know another language. And so that's where I've seen like value in actually saying that something is different than you're used to versus saying, and it can be innocent. Like it's not like someone sat me down and taught me that, hey, everything else is just funny. Let's make fun of it. It's a lot of it was probably just passing comments of like, yeah, it does sound kind of funny. Ha ha ha, that is funny. But like how it can, if just being a little more present in those moments, which I struggle with, but being more present and just having the wherewithal to say, no, it's not funny. It's just, you just don't know that language. And here's, 10 seconds on why there's other languages even, depending how old the kids are. But yeah. Sorry, what were we going to say?
No, that's all. When you said here's 10 seconds on why there's other languages, it's just funny because we have different tendencies where I just want to answer their question and maybe give them one more sentence, and you want to answer their question and also get into
10
it.
minutes.
Yes.
Why there's other languages? Yeah.
And then you lose them along the way.
10 seconds in, but I'm going for another 9.
You're still going.
Yeah. Do you want to share the when one of our kids when you're explaining what it was like or what being bald was?
Yeah, I feel like you may have said this before, but yeah, I was, oh gosh. Yeah, one of our kids was 3. It was at Chipotle. It's very vivid. And they asked what the word bald meant for some reason. And so I just said, it means that you don't have hair on your head. And so then they pointed at somebody and said, yeah, like that guy. He's bald. Which I'm like, you're right. Also, keep your voice down.
You had to have seen that coming.
I didn't know why they asked. I didn't know there was a bald person behind us. I didn't know any of it.
Did and the person heard?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Eye contact with you guys? Or
I don't know.
Avoided?
Maybe I deal with it better now, but I wasn't prepared then.
Yeah, man. What I wouldn't have given to be there. As you know. I love awkward moments, listeners, if you didn't know that. All right, well, I got some more things to delve into. This isn't completely correlated, but it has more to do with us. Loving Day just passed.
Yeah.
Is it the 12th? Anyway,
Yes.
The 12th, I believe. Loving Day just passed. How do you feel when you think about the fact that interracial marriage was illegal less than 70 years ago?
Boo.
Boo. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about. I should have wrote the exact date down. Less than 70 years is what I wrote down. Interracial marriage was illegal in our country and then became legal.
Yeah.
Look up all the nitty gritty. I won't go through all of it because, as Kaitlyn mentioned, I have a tendency to go off on tangents. But boo.
That feels worth like a couple sentences. You could do a little tangent.
Yeah. Well, why just boo? You elaborate first.
Okay. It's sad. Yeah, I mean, I think segregation feels really long ago, and it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
It was not maybe in our lifetime. I say maybe because there's all types of like, even if it wasn't legal, segregation is still happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, specifically, like it was in our parents' lifetime. Yeah, and then like thinking about the law saying that we could not be married, we have so many friends in interracial marriages,
Yeah.
and that they could not be married, and it was even more specifically targeted of like they didn't want interracial kids.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's offensive, and it's sad, and it's shocking that it's both shocking and not shocking that it was not that long ago.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the 2 cents I would have added because of where we've been going with this conversation so far. But I think it can be easy to hear about Loving versus Virginia, so the state of Virginia, that it was just only about skin color or interracial marriage solely, which would have been bad enough. But it was literally specifically they didn't want mixed kids, which is where we started, and how just what do you say about that other than boo, disgusting, and terrible?
Yeah.
I think,
Well, that's what we would say, but there are still people who feel that way.
Sure.
Like that. It's not gone. And it's, something that not a ton, thankfully, but it's definitely something we've gotten comments about over time.
Yeah. I think it can be both. Yeah, we've experienced, a couple people off the top of my head, won't name names, that literally have problems with interracial marriage.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a lot of layers to it, which, stems from, like you said, this wasn't like 1967. That wasn't that long ago. That's crazy. Less than 70 years. And so to me, that's powerful. We keep moving forward. Time passes, obviously, but we forget, like, oh, this was not that long ago. That is staggering to me.
Yeah.
And then for it to be the motivation of like dumbed down to almost like I don't even know how to describe it, but like, not wanting mixed race kids. Like that is, whenever you bring kids into it, makes it more egregious. But that is just on all levels. Crazy. I lost my thought, which I was about to say. There was obviously pushback aside from kids, like people didn't want interracial marriage. Either. Oh, what I was going to say is there can be, overt pushback, which, like you said, there still is. We've seen that firsthand as well. But then I think that what I think we've even noticed is people's, I guess, learned biases or like implicit reactions to us. Even I notice it at certain times when we're doing certain jobs where people will assume that we're not together. Yeah. When there's really all the signs that we probably are married. And yes. It's a thing. It's in context where it's more of a feeling. I can't necessarily prove anything, but it's happened enough though. We've been married a good bit. Yeah. And it's hard not to be like, what is giving off the vibe that you would assume that we're not married? Yeah. And things like that we've both noticed by now. Yeah. Anyway, do you have anything to add on that?
I have an unserious thought to add.
Yeah.
Is that
we need that too.
Is that why it's Virginia's for lovers?
Huh. I wonder if it is. I've always wondered that. Let's look that up. Okay, you've looked it up, right?
I looked it up.
Wishful
thinking.
Wishful thinking. That would have made so much sense.
It would have, but it also wouldn't have because...
Okay, what's the truth?
That's never how things go. The truth is that Virginia is for lovers was created by the team. It's like the Virginia State Travel Service.
Huh.
This is AI answering for me like Google does now, but... originally, the team considered Virginia is for history lovers, Virginia is for beach lovers, Virginia is for mountain lovers. They wanted to say that you could find anything to love in Virginia.
Oh, wow.
Maybe not anyone.
Okay.
Who knows?
Not anyone, but anything.
I mean, they didn't specifically say not anyone, but, you
Yeah.
know, it was not at all, not related.
I think we should figure out a way to have it be about Loving Day.
Now it can be related for us.
Yeah. Okay, you graciously said that I should say a little bit more about Loving Day, and I think you're right. Loving Day. For those who don't know, I am no historian whatsoever. I've not known the significance of Loving Day for very long. But all right, Loving Day. I'm reading this offline. Celebrates June 12th. We're right about that. 1967, when the Supreme Court unanimously struck down miscegenation laws that prohibited people of different races from marrying or cohabitating. The suit was brought by Richard and Mildred Loving, hence the name. Richard Loving was white, Mildred Jeter was black. So I don't know if you knew this, Kaitlyn, but so they married in 1958 in Central Point, Caroline County, Virginia. After their marriage, they were arrested and convicted of violating Virginia's Racial Integrity Act. Their sentence was suspended on condition they leave Virginia. They moved to D.C., but later in 1964, when they wanted to return to Central Point, they filed the suit that led to the Supreme Court decision. That's kind of in a nutshell. Powerful.
Yeah.
And
the last name of, what's his first name? The man.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, I was going to say Richard. Is Richard Loving, which is
Richard
why
Loving.
it's...
Yeah, hence the
Yeah.
name. Yep, Richard and Mildred Loving, married 1958. Were banned from the state.
Yeah.
Arrested.
I did know that.
Arrested. Yeah.
There is a doc that we should watch about it,
We
though.
should.
Because I heard there was a really good documentary that was released like a year or two ago about Loving Day.
Yeah, we'll put that in the notes.
Yeah.
Man, this is a really good article. 40 years after the Loving decision, Mildred Loving issued a statement that said, in part, "Not a day goes by that I don't think of Richard and our love, our right to marry, and how much it meant to me to have that freedom to marry the person precious to me, even if others thought he was the wrong kind of person for me to marry." Yeah, I read another, as I was looking stuff up, tidbit about the day, and so that was a Supreme Court decision. The day was not established till I think, very recently.
Yeah, it's super recent.
2000.
You want me to Google?
2004. The idea for Loving Day came from one person, Ken Tanabe, who was mixed race. In 2004, while a student at Parsons, the new school for design. So anyway, 2004, he was inspired by just learning about the Lovings and wanted to study it. And long story short, the day came about in 2004. So that's so recent.
Yeah.
Imagine how many people, didn't, ourselves included, really know about what, myself included.
I know. I was going to say, I really feel like I've only heard people talk about it even in the last 5 years.
Yeah, 2004. That's crazy. It's crazy. Almost as crazy as this being illegal to 1967. Crazy.
Yeah. That's like if you, so like to put that in perspective, like, okay, if it's illegal till 1967, I'm trying to do some math. Like, if you know mixed race adults of a certain age, like I don't know. I just feel like that would be
very powerful.
Yeah, not something to gawk at, but something to notice of there's way more mixed race people now than there were before, and some of that was law.
Yeah, crazy. We can move on, but this is obviously personal to us. We'd be remiss if not only what you just said about even knowing people that this, may have been married when this was illegal, but also, look, the reality is, before the Supreme Court decision, people were literally arrested and killed for breaking this law. It's facts. And so this is, just so powerful. Just crazy stuff.
We shoot weddings, right? That's one of our, that's my job. And roped you into it for a long time. And we see, one of the sweetest parts is always when we get to see older couples dancing together. I always cry. David looks at me as I am
It is emotional.
silently weep.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're not emotional. I'm just saying I am
You're
very
weeping.
emotional.
You're weeping on the job.
Yes. And but yeah, even thinking about that, it's hard to think about a time when there's been a sweet pair of grandparents who have been married for 60 years who are interracial.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not the case.
Yeah.
So, which makes sense. I mean, yeah.
Crazy. All right, this will be interconnected still, but as we've grown, you and I as a family, why has it been increasingly important to keep these conversations going, regularly talking about race as we raise our kids, prioritizing things like raising them in diverse settings, specifically as we're not really in a quote-unquote super diverse area.
Yeah.
With that said, I don't want to downplay the diversity that, in some ways it's more diverse than people think, as we've come to realize as well. But
yeah.
I don't know, as we've had our kids are getting, older. They're still babies, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're babies.
They'll come
just
after
tiny
me.
babies.
Yeah. I don't know why has it been increasingly important, or do you feel like it has as they've gotten older?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the nice thing about parenthood in general is that it's like a slow growth. Doesn't feel that way when it's happening, but at first you have an infant and you're just caring for physical needs and not emotional and not spiritual. And yeah. And anyways, as your kids are growing up, you're getting to grow up with them. So like when we had just infants who couldn't understand a word that someone would say to them or a conversation, like, yeah, of course we're not having to think about it as much. We were thinking more about like our relationship to our relationship to other people in the context of what they thought about us raising a baby who's mixed race. Most of the time, non-issue. Most of what I feel like I talked about this last time, but it has been a zillion episodes since then.
Zillions.
Not a zillion, but at least 40 to 60.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah. So what we get about our kids, especially as babies, is more fascination and not like a mean word or something. It's mostly people being like, that's incredible. They're so beautiful, in a way that's like a little bit too over the top sometimes. And that if you have a mixed race kid or you are a mixed race kid, you probably understand what I'm talking about. And if you don't, you might not. And that's okay.
Or if you're an interracial couple without kids, you might hear this already.
You might hear people
if you're
always telling you how beautiful your children will be in a way that's a little unsettling. Yeah.
A little much.
Anyways, so we were more thinking about that and, when we had infants and little toddlers, and now as we have kids that are interacting with the world and interacting in their schools and are like continuing to be in larger and larger settings, of course it's more important to talk about. Like, we always want to talk to our kids about things that they might hear out in the world somewhere. So we'd rather them have a conversation with us than have somebody on a playground say something to them and then them have to come to us to ask a question. Of course, we're always we want to be open for all questions and be a safe place for our kids to come to. But I think our goal is that we would have the conversation first. So when they hear something out in the world, it wouldn't be new to them or wouldn't be like so foreign that they don't even know how to talk about it. Like, that they'd be coming to us more as a check-in of like, remember this thing we talked about? Somebody else brought it up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy when they're like in February, Black History Month, learning about Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., Rosa Parks, and even the bigger names.
Yeah.
As they're learning about civil rights the civil rights movement. I've enjoyed those follow-up conversations with the kids when they come home because we've had a lot of those conversations already with them, but then to hear them rehash what they've learned and how they refer to the different people they're learning about. Like, have you heard them say they refer to Dr. King as King Martin?
Yes, King Martin or Martin.
Yeah, which I think is, King Martin, that's a solid or backwards call, but if anything, it sounds cooler or just as cool. King Martin. Yeah. Let's see.
Okay, so like, for example, for us, we've talked about with our kids, like, okay, we were just talking about this before, but like you are, like Papa is South Korean, so you are Korean. You are Asian. Mama, they like to say Mama is just white, which like, I don't know as much of what I am.
You're either just white or you're also Asian.
Sometimes they also say
I've shared that a few times. Yep.
Yes. But like somebody asked me this just a couple days ago, of like, oh, like how do your kids ever ask you about you guys looking different than each other? Mm-hmm. And I just said, no, not really. Like, I don't think that they would notice. Like, we've always been Mama and Papa. So they don't look at us and go, you guys look different. Like, we're just Mama and Papa. But we have explained that we are different because someone else is going to say that to them
100%.
for sure at some point. So yeah, we're just more of that frame of mind of like, okay, we want to say something before someone else does, and we want to put it in the context that that's like beautiful and a good thing instead of like something
a different negative thing.
Yeah, judgmental or even like weirdly curious about. Yeah, like we want to explain to our kids that they are Asian before someone says to them, you're Asian.
Mm-hmm. And I'd say, and even to piggyback off that, speaking from some obvious personal experience, that might, even what you just said, might not sound to the listening ear as something super negative. And what I'd say to give some context is when it's pointed out by kids on the playground, it's not usually in a friendly way.
No.
It's almost always in a derogatory, not always, but usually intentionally derogatory or bullying manner. So we want to get ahead of that.
Yeah. Which like that's not the kids' fault. Like that's something that they've learned from whatever environment they're in.
Mm-hmm. And I even want, and that I think sheds light on something we said towards the beginning of a place where I was, and still do, but am often coming from as a self-protective mode, even as a parent of like, well, it's not like if you are kids, maybe, hopefully we'll get into the future question in a second, but hopefully I'm wrong about this, but in my mind, I'm like, they are going to experience this, so I'm going to prepare them for it.
Yeah.
But I'm also aware how that can be a little pessimistic, and it could, it can prepare them in the wrong way, because I brought up things to, our 8-year-old. I can't think of a great example off the top of my head, but they have he's had a reaction of like something that I would be like, obviously he's dealt with this, and then he's just looked at me like deer in the headlights, or not deer in the headlights, but blank stare of like, why? Like, no, why would I think about that? Mm-hmm. It reminded
your like jump.
Yeah, my jump is self-preservation.
Yes, or like to go off your own experience. And then to say, surely, something like that. And you know how much it's been like something has been hurtful to you. So then you jump to like, surely that's going to happen to them.
Right.
And like, hopefully, I don't think I'm naive about this, but like, hopefully the way that people talk to their children has gotten better in 30 years. Obviously not, the state of the world shows us that it hasn't gotten that much better, but I do think there are some things that are probably a little bit different, but also like, we don't need to assume that the exact same things are going to happen.
Yeah.
Also, like there's a reality of our kids, like, they are pretty white passing, so they're not going to hear the same things that you did.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about, on that note, I don't even want to ask that because I know the answer, so I feel like that'd be dishonest. So why have we not considered not talking about this because of the fact that our kids kind of lean towards white passing? Like, it could be, it could be fairly easy to really not talk much about it because they also won't experience the same thing in the same way that I did.
Yeah. They won't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to what we said at the beginning. Like, we want them to understand that God made people differently on purpose and intentionally. Like, intentionally, there are different cultures and people look different, and that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it's something to, like, embrace.
Yeah, that reminds me of that. That's an example that I couldn't think of when our kids started public school around here. I think my assumption is that the classroom would not be super diverse.
Yeah.
And I view that as a negative because we care about, diversity and that everyone being made different is beautiful and that something is missing when there's not diversity in general.
Yes.
And so we really wholeheartedly believe in that. And then we've been pleasantly surprised. Obviously, it could be, our area could be more diverse, but that so far it's been probably more diverse than our expectations have been. Like the classes that our kids have been in, and I think it was either that or something else, maybe some other activity. But I think just one day it was almost a passing comment, but I said, "Oh, how you like your class?" Like I just said, looks like it's a really diverse class. Like, there's a lot of different people in your class that have different skin color, which is really, that's really cool. And I think that's maybe all I said. And I remember, our 8-year-old, he was younger then, but just kind of being like, yeah. And so, like, not having much reaction. And so I didn't think a ton of it, but there's two, I think, ends of the spectrum on that. There could be one way I could react and be like, oh my gosh, he doesn't care, so I need to be paranoid. Or the other end of like, hey, maybe I should also embrace the fact that, like, maybe he's used to this because of how we prioritize in our house. Or just like, hey, he's in elementary school. Like, this is what he's experiencing, and he's 5. So I should, like, maybe be a little more happy that he doesn't think it's strange, that he's like, okay, that's all I know.
That's like why we are talking about it from a young age, right? This is like a normal part of the experience instead of a normal part of his, like, identity in the world, instead of what I think a lot of people have experienced the last 5-ish years, which is like, oh, brand new information about racism in the world.
Right. All right. You okay for a couple more?
Yeah, this might be a 2-parter. We're chatty.
So I wonder what you say to this question. What would you say has been the most impactful decision we have made for our family under the umbrella of what we're talking about?
Yeah, I'd say we left our church that we've been going to for a decade, if not more, 2.5 years ago, to be a part of a multi-ethnic church plant. We had already been feeling, convicted in the area of multi-ethnicity and of that having a really high value, a higher value than, we felt like was being held. And then through a lot of conversations, we just realized we weren't aligned in that area, and that was something for our family that, needed to hold a really, really high value, and that we needed to be spiritually in a church body that was valuing it in the same way that we were. So at the same time, a church plant started, around the same time a church plant started that was starting a multi-ethnic church body. So yeah, we made the decision to be a part of that, but that meant a lot of, bittersweetness. And that when we're talking about for our family, that means we were moving our kids out of a church community that, it was really only the oldest at this point, who had an understanding, but out of a community that they loved.
Right.
That was really hard.
Yeah. Still is. And I'd echo the same thing. That's what I would have answered as well if I was asking myself that question. And yeah, like you said, we only had our oldest, who was really the only one that was worth having the conversations about why
As far as like where they're at with understanding.
Right. With leaving. And that was one of, that was a really powerful time I remember having with our oldest at that time about breaking it down why we were leaving. Like he is aware of, obviously not to the depth of me and you and I are, but is aware of why we did that. And seeing him understand that, also knowing that he was hurting while we were doing that, was in some way comforting and kind of confirmation that, okay, he does get it, and he's seems like he's understanding it in a powerful way, especially as a little one, and is in it with us. And so that, I think, was one way for me, I know, was how the Lord confirmed, okay, we are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
As we are explaining it to our kids as we're doing it together.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was not that was more of, I didn't know we needed that, and I didn't even know we were gonna have the conversation when we had it, but it really helped me at that time to have that conversation with him, knowing that you and I had those conversations and we were on the same page. But it helped to know that, okay, I don't just feel like you and I are foreseeing this on, our kids, but they're now officially like in it with us. And yeah, it's been beautiful, hard and beautiful.
Yeah. Somebody at a conference we were at a couple years ago talked about, like, we always think about, as believers, we think about being sent to a specific place for a specific reason and time. But we don't normally think about our kids that way. And that was really helpful to me in reframing, just about our kids in general, is that, like, they too could be needed.
Yeah.
Somewhere. And have a purpose in a place. And I think about that on their teams and in their classes.
Yeah.
That the Lord sends them for a purpose too, and that we get to support them in that.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just like at a whim of whatever, or what's the phrase? They're not just affected by all of our decisions. They have a purpose in them too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Thanks for answering that.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's just do one more. What do you hope things look like in 10 years in general and for our family?
I don't know. I'm panicking. It's very hard to think about the future.
Yeah.
Well, that's too long, because then we have an 18-year-old in 10 years.
That's actually perfect. That's a great transition.
That's terrible. We'll have 18, 15, and 11-year-old. I don't know. I guess I'm hopeful in our family that things are, I'm always hopeful that things are similar, but I'm hopeful that in this area things are similar. Like,
hope that we're recording episode 500 and I think this is 69, so.
I guess I'm just hopeful that our kids grow into people who know how to love people who are different than them, and who gravitate as they think they do right now, but they're little kids. So, like, it's something that we have to shepherd for a long time. But yeah, as I think they do now, like, who gravitate towards the marginalized, towards kids who might not be as easily accepted, who like want to love people, who, this isn't race based, but like, yeah, who might be more difficult or might be having like trouble. Like right now, they tend to kind of gravitate towards those kids. But yeah, also that they would continue to see the beauty in, in people that are different.
Yeah, that was great. I echo all the same things in our family, and as I have the audacity to ask in general.
I hope so too. That's tough.
Yeah. I mean, shout out to even last episode, our friend Vicky Willis, who, when I asked her, what can we we do?
Yeah.
Mainly parents, but everybody, in this wheelhouse. And her answer was, she even, I think, said, this might sound cliche, but just teach your kids to love my kids, meaning.
Yeah.
So I would hope that the fruit of that happening would become a reality. So then, as you said, when we have an 18-year-old, 15-year-old, 11-year-old, that is much more the reality that they're living in, that we're not, everything's never going to be perfect. We know that, but that we are not having this conversation with the same urgency because, like I said, I hope that there's a time where it almost seems strange to have this conversation so much because it's things are not in this drastic of a state, contentious state, I guess.
I agree with that. I think I have hope for Gen Z for sure. Like I think so we work with college students too, and when I look back at our college experience and the way that we spoke to each other, joked around, talked about friends. Like, it's so different than the way that people can enter a room in college now. Like, there's just a lot more acceptance. There's a lot more, like, understanding. Like, people are not pointing out something that's different as often as they used to and making it into the butt of a joke. So I feel like I have a lot of hope in that place. When you look at like large scale, it feels pretty hard to be hopeful. It does feel like history keeps on repeating itself. And I never want to use it as a cop out of like, okay, I just got to like keep my head down and focus on home. Because I think sometimes I can use that as a reason and not like look at larger scale of like the state, the country, the world, and being passionate about, seeing justice in all of those places. But it's still true that the primary job has got to be to teach our kids to love people.
Yeah. All right, one more, because you brought it up kind of with the answer to that one. I think I might have written it down and skipped over it, but what would you say with that tension? Because I think that's very relatable to people listening, with the very real tension of feeling the tendency to want to put your head down and worry about home versus the need to focus on the world, a bigger picture, knowing that you can't change the world.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody dealing with that very tension of, well, I can't do anything. I'm just one person, so I'm just going to do what I can and worry about my family, which is also not a bad thing to worry about.
Yeah.
Which we talk about a lot.
I'd say me too. That we have to fight fatigue. It's really easy to grow fatigued, and I'm saying that as somebody who like is white and isn't experiencing racism towards me, and that there's injustices that are happening in the world that are easy to not look at because I know I'm personally not going to experience them. Like, that may not be exactly what I like consciously think about, but certainly unconsciously. That's why it's easier to be like, oh, this is so exhausting. I can't look at it anymore. I just need to focus on home. So I don't know. I think it's just like fighting for home to be all that matters, but while still holding that value really high, I guess. Like, I got to care about how I raise my kids. I have to care about how I'm teaching them to communicate with other people. And I should care about local elections. Like, I do want to hold those things really, really high. But then, like, yeah, how does that bleed out into church and job and then, like, going higher than that, too? I don't know.
No, that's good.
It's really easy to just feel too tired.
Yeah. Has there been anything, would you recommend anything that you've personally, at any point, read, listened to, or watched that you can recall that has been impactful in how you view life now, I guess, having to do with this stuff?
Yeah, so many things. It's hard to put a finger on it. I love to watch something. I feel like some of them are just older now, and I maybe talked about last time. But yeah, I mean, we love a show.
Well, that means if you talked about last time, that means it's still like impacting you.
Yeah, I mean, I think about there's a book, Small Great Things by Jodi Piccoult. See, that's not how you say her name. She just came on TikTok recently, and everyone's been saying her name is Piccoult for like 20 years, and it's actually Pico.
Pico?
Jodi Piccoult.
Okay.
I think.
Was it Piccoult?
Oult.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, Small Great Things, which is, it's loosely based on a true story, but it is fiction. About a black nurse who was in the room with a white baby who died, and the parents of the baby are, neo-Nazis. And it's about like the case that unfolded after that, and specifically like the lawyer's point of view as someone who's pretty similar to me, like just like close to mid-age white woman who doesn't think she is racist, essentially, and about her coming to like way more understanding and having to be in proximity to people who are very different than her. So anyways, it really impacted me in a really significant way, even though it was fiction. Like, yeah.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Do you think we should break it up in 2 parts? I think one part's good.
I don't know how long it's been.
Yeah, I don't either. I can't see my time. Well, listeners, thank you so much for listening. Kaitlyn, thank you for doing this. From living room.
Surrounded by
laundry. Doing a great job folding. You guys, thank you so much for listening. Again, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, share. Tell your friends, tell your family. And also check out patreon.com/racially speaking if you'd like to support us financially for as little as $1 a month. The music you're listening to is done by our guy Dylan Dent, and our artwork was created by Ashley Bush. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
The nightmare might scare you, no worse than reality. They hunt you by day, R.I.P. Ahmaud Arbery. Everybody got a time, but that's less than comforting. I hope I'm alive by the time they choose to comfort me. Mosquitoes in the vein, or leeches on my soul. This money on my mind is a fracture in my bones. You get crippled by continuing existence like a ghost. And they wonder why we drink, and they wonder why we smoke, and they wonder why we think that everything's a joke. I'm shocked that we can sleep, must be the thought of letting go.